Hey everybody, welcome to our company training today. My name's Tyler McMaster. I'm a paramedic firefighter here with Wilson County EMA, and I'll be your lead instructor. Today we're going to be talking about overhaul operations, which is covered by NFPA 1001, specifically 5.3.13. A quick safety briefing to the building. We've got two emergency exits, one to my left here that takes us out to 109. We'll come out the left door here, down the sidewalk, back to the apron, or we can exit out to the right here through the apparatus bay, out to the apron, and we'll regroup. If you need to use the bathrooms are located down the hall to the left. Does anyone have any questions before we get started? Talking about overhaul, our main learning objectives will be to describe and define overhaul operations, talk about the tools required for overhaul, describe our safety concerns with performing overhaul, preservation of the structural integrity of the building during overhaul. Our skill objective is covered by Skill Drill 18-13 in our Firefighting Fundamentals textbook, specifically talking about opening a ceiling to check for fire with a pipe pole, and we'll also talk about opening an interior wall. We'll only be conducting class in here due to training space and equipment availability. Your psychomotor test will be at a different time. To start talking about overhaul, what is overhaul? Overhaul is the process of searching for and extinguishing pockets of fire that remain after a fire has been brought under control. So we start overhaul after we've completed a good knockdown on our fire. Our goal is to identify and open any void spaces where fire might be burning undetected at this time. We think about single pockets of embers can cause a rekindle, and the fire is not fully extinguished until overhaul is completed. Our goal is to not come back to the structure and prevent rekindling from fire that we didn't find initially on our search and our initial fire. Some of our big safety considerations. Our overhaul is very strenuous work. We need to make sure that we're rotating firefighters. We should have a safety officer assigned to maintain 2 in, 2 out as well. Firefighters are going to get fatigued, and when they start getting fatigued, they'll probably start to overlook hazards. So our safety officer needs to be really keyed into making sure that firefighters are conducting overhaul in a safe manner, wearing full PPE. They're also going to be exposed to still potentially toxic gases. Visibility may still be limited. You're going to be working on wet and potentially icy surfaces from where we put a lot of water into this structure. And if it's in the wintertime, it may have been frozen over now because the building's exposed. Smoldering areas can still reignite into active fire. Firefighters should be in full PPE during all of overhaul operations. And another big concern for us is structural collapse. The structural integrity of the building itself that we're fighting fire in may have been compromised by the fire or by our initial fire attack and moving through the building. Some indicators for structural collapse are lightweight truss construction, walls that are cracked or look like they're out of alignment, like they're slumping in, sagging floors, pooling water on the floors, heavy equipment that's been up on the roof, especially if we've been doing any kind of roof operations and vertical ventilation, overhanging cornices and signs that could fall down. And like I said, that safety officer should be present the whole time. The safety officer should also confirm that all the utilities have been rendered safe before we begin opening up walls and working anywhere where electrical lines and gas lines may be present. In addition to that, the incident commander may call for hydraulic ventilation or hydraulic overhaul, in which we'll use large diameter hose to extinguish any fire that we can't get to, whether from collapse or just difficult to access, whether it's in subfloors and there's a lot of stuff on top of it. So we could use aerial master streams or blitz nozzles to kind of put a lot of water in areas and essentially flood it out. One of the big things with overhaul is that overhaul operations should be coordinated with fire investigators as well. Any suspicion of arson while we are conducting overhaul, we could be destroying evidence. We want to make sure that evidence isn't lost or destroyed. We want to make sure that the investigators examine the area if we find evidence of arson before we continue overhauling that area, so that they have a chance to photograph or collect it, and do whatever they need to do. We should also, while we're conducting overhaul, look for burn patterns that could indicate intentional ignition points throughout the structure. We should note whether appliances have been plugged in or they were left turned on. Look at gas nozzles if there's a gas stove. If the knob has been turned into the on position, that could indicate an intentional gas diffusion. And anything that is suspicious is found should delay overall operations, like we said, until the investigator can come take a look at it. The next question is, where do we conduct overhaul? Overhaul needs to be thorough and extensive. The goal is to make sure that the fire is completely out. Overhaul depends on the building's construction and the contents within the building, as well as the size of the fire that was initially present that we found on our attack. We want to look for openings in walls and in ceilings and floors that would have allowed any fire and gases to escape and move and spread through the structure. Some of those specifically are utility shafts, pipe chases, and doors or dampers that don't close snugly. When we talk about building construction, we look at specifically wood frame construction and balloon construction. Wood frame construction tends to have a lot of void spaces. Every wall, ceiling, and potential void space needs to be opened up and checked. And then with balloon frame construction, balloon frame allows fire to spread from a basement all the way up to an attic, and we may not notice it as it spreads from one floor to the other and may potentially even bypasses floors. These structures require careful floor-by-floor overhaul and evaluation. Some of the things we look for, as well as voids that are created by remodeling inside of homes. As homes are updated and remodeled, they may have false doors or false ceilings, and those ceilings and doors leave space, like void spaces, that fire can get on, and we would never find them visually. Consider also looking at the original location of the fire, and as you start to determine where to overhaul, check areas where ventilation ducts and chimneys are found, and check areas where wiring and electrical fires. When we look for potential void spaces in a fire, you want to use your senses. Look, listen, and feel. Some of the things that we're looking for are smoke from cracks around doors and windows, fresh or new smoke that wasn't there when we started working in the area, red glowing embers, burnt areas, discolored material, especially in walls, and peeling or cracked paint and plaster. Some of the things we want to listen for are crackling and hissing sounds, which could sounds like wood burning slowly or hissing of gases making its way through spaces. You also want to you can use the back of your hand to feel for heat present behind walls. Another big tool for us as we conduct overhaul is using TICs, or thermal imaging cameras. They produce images of even slight differences in temperature, and they can detect hotspots for us behind ceilings, walls, and other floors. Interpreting TIC readings takes a lot of practice and training as well. But they can assist us in, like I said, in the hiding fires and heat, but does not replace a thorough investigation by firefighters actually opening up walls and wood spaces. Overhaul techniques. Anytime we're conducting overhaul, we always want to make sure that we have a charged hose line available, ready to douse any sudden flare-ups and hotspots that we find. Any small pockets of fire and smoldering material, we want to make sure we extinguish with the least amount of water possible, so that we don't create water ponding and collecting in areas inside the house. If we find smoldering objects, we want to drop them into a bathtub or a bucket filled with water and remove them from the home if possible. Remove mattresses and other potential materials that are prone to smoldering and douse them thoroughly outside and somewhere safely away from the building, where if they did flare up while they were sitting outside, they can't catch the residents or the exterior walls or anything. We also want to make sure that we don't block any entrances or exits, and if we find window openings that we need to get smoldering material out, we can enlarge them using power tools or other means to make the window and door openings larger to facilitate getting mattresses and cabinets or other furniture out. Some of the tools that we use for overhaul operation, they're designed for cutting, prying, and pulling. These tools include pipe pulls and ceiling hooks, axes, power tools like power saws, pitchforks and shovels, rubbish hooks and rakes, small hand lines, buckets, tubs, wheelbarrows, and carryalls for any material that we need to bring out of the residence. Now we'll talk about how we actually open walls and ceilings. For most residential structures with drywall, we look at using a 6-foot pike pole. We start from the corner of the room that's farthest away from the exit. We work our way backwards towards the exit. So work further away from the door and work your way back towards the door. So that way, as you pull ceiling and pull debris down, you don't block your exit from the building. Power saws and hand saws can also be used to make cuts in walls and ceilings and allow you to pull the section away by hand if you need to as you make cuts with those tools. Does anyone have any questions at this point?
As you were pulling material, would it be better to pull stuff and kind of get it into like a pile, or would you want to leave it separated out to try to keep hot items away from each other?
You can try and keep it separated as best as possible to keep kind of those hot items away until you can get some water on them to cool them or extinguish whatever's smoldering. Good question.
What if it's a hoarder type situation? Like, how would you, when you're pulling, like, you have all that, you already have a small space to get into. So how would you do that if it's like a hoarding house or something like that? Would you still want to pull some of that stuff out first and then start pulling walls? Or?
We'll definitely want, if we're in a hoarder house or similar situation, we'll definitely want to get some of that material out, especially material that could be potentially salvageable, which, we'll talk about in our lesson on salvage operations as well. But we definitely want to make room for us to work safely and efficiently inside the space before we try and actually start pulling the ceiling and wall open. Next thing that we'll talk about is the skills involved with actually pulling ceiling. So the skill that we would demonstrate in our psychomotor evaluation of this skill later will be actually pulling ceiling with a 6-foot pike pole. The steps involved: step 1, make sure that we want to select the appropriate size pike pole for the space that we're working in. So if we have shorter ceilings, a 6-foot pole might be perfect for us. We may need a 14-foot if we're in taller vaulted living rooms or things. We need to determine the area that is to be opened. We need to position ourselves with our back towards the door so that as we pull that ceiling down, we don't block our exit with debris. We need to use strong upward thrusting motion to penetrate the tip of the pike pole into the ceiling, and then face the hook down and away from the side from yourself when you pull down. We'll pull down and away from our body, and we'll pull the section of ceiling until the desired area is open. And any insulation that we find in the ceiling, we want to make sure that we start to pull that out as well. Yes?
Are we going to pull the whole ceiling in a room? Like if it was just a corner of a room that had a fire, are we pulling the whole ceiling? Or are we just going till we don't see any signs of like heat or damage?
Usually we'll stop until once we stop seeing signs of extension and heat and fire, that's where we'll stop. But we'll always move past that area where we found extension to make sure that it doesn't continue on past the area that we found. So a quick review: who remembers how we can define overhaul?
So basically, overhaul is done after the main fire is put out, and then we go into salvage and overhaul as far as overhauls where we're going to check for any type of extension or anything and start pulling ceilings or hitting or opening walls up to see if we can extension to make sure that we're getting any fire that is hidden that we didn't see initially.
Right. And from our textbook, our definition for overhaul was: overhaul is the process of searching for and extinguishing pockets of fire that remain after a fire has been brought under control. Who remembers how we look for fire during overhaul?
You can use by listening for it, listening for crackles and hissing, or you can use thermal imaging camera, or you can use the back of your hand to feel for heat, or look for any, I guess patterns that would lead you towards an area that there might be an extension as far as like burn marks or stuff like that.
Right, so like you said, we look, listen, and feel, and then we can also use our TIC or our thermal imaging camera to find those pockets of heat and smoldering and extension in those void spaces. What kind of tools can we use for overhaul operations?
We use pipe pole.
Pipe pole?
Size pipe poles. We can use axe. We can use power tools if we needed to.
So hooks,
Sailing hooks,
rubber hooks.
rubber hooks. If we found a small piece of debris or a small object that was still smoldering, what would we want to do with it?
Put it outside.
That's right, put it outside
Spray it down.
and wet it down.
Or you put it in if you had a bucket with some water in it, you put it in there.
Put it in the-
Bathtub.
Or a bathtub filled with water as well. When we're spraying water during overhaul operations, what do we want to make sure we do?
Not spray too much.
That's right, use the least amount of water possible. And what are some of our safety considerations during overhaul operations?
Or we wanna look for any sagging floors, we wanna check the integrity of the building and the structure itself. We wanna look for, if you had been upstairs or a lot of water had been put in the attic, we wanna make sure there's not a lot of water coming down from there to cause more damage.
Look for cracks and like
Yeah.
in the bricks and the mortar between them and stuff like that, or like you
Yeah.
said, bowing walls. And if it was upstairs, sagging ceiling in the level below.
What are two things during overhaul that we should make sure that we always have? One being if we have the manpower to fill the position, the safety officer. And anytime we start to open ceilings, what should we have with us with our tools? Charge hose. Any questions so far? We will now go ahead and move on to our written test questions if we're at time, I think. Actually, before we go there, we'll do a quick review of the skills that were associated with opening with the ceilings. So this skill drill will give us what we need to make sure that we go through our skill sheet for pulling ceiling. So kind of like we talked about as we reviewed the points on the skill sheet, step one will be to make sure that we select the appropriate length pipe pull. And so you can see here the firefighter is in full PPE on air with an appropriately length sized pipe pull to reach the ceiling above him. Step two, he's positioning himself with his back towards his door so he always knows where his exit is, and he knows that if he pulls any debris down, as it pulls down from the ceiling, it will not obstruct his way out. Step three, using a strong upward motion, he's going to penetrate the ceiling with the pipe pole with the tip of it and make his entrance in through the ceiling. And then step four, he's going to pull down and away from his body so that the ceiling material falls down and away from him, and making sure that we pull any insulation as well. And then step five, he's going to continue pulling down sections of ceiling until, like Jamie mentioned, making sure that we get all of that extended area. So we're going to keep looking for signs of extension through that ceiling, looking for burn marks, looking for burning embers, smoldering insulation material, material like insulation, rolled fiberglass, anything like that kind of the ceiling. Does anyone have any questions about the actual steps of performing the ceiling? When do you think it would be okay for us to come off of air while we are performing overhaul operations? Right. And so how do we think that the safety officer might clear the space to make sure that it's safe for us to come off of air on our SCBAs? gas meters. Does anyone know how many gas meters we carry on most of our engines here?
One. Sometimes two.
Sometimes. Okay. Any questions before we move to our written test? No? Okay.
What if you're shorter than all the pipe holes? And you make them really, really fast?
That's why we work in teams of two. Alright. One for you. And one for you. Does everyone have a pen? Everybody done? We'll do a quick review of the test, and then we'll wrap up with any last questions, and then we'll get on out of here for the day. All right. Question number 1: what sort of personal protective equipment should firefighters wear during overhaul?
B.
B. Full PPE with SCBA. Question number 2: during overhaul, what should be available to douse any hot spots or flare-ups? D. A charged hose line. Question number 3: before a firefighter can work without SCBA, the atmosphere must be tested and determined safe by the safety officer. Second part was true-false questions. Number 1: it is okay to not wear SCBA during the overhaul process. False. Structural integrity may be compromised during overhaul. True. Some short answers. List 4 potential hazards during overhaul operations. Toxic gases,
The structure might be compromised.
structural integrity, falling
Falling debris,
debris.
environmental, like icy or slippery
That was
surfaces.
perfect. And our last section, the matching. Number 1, the pick head axe. C, a cutting tool often used in the overhaul process. Number 2, pike pole. A, used for opening up ceiling during overhaul. And lastly, thermal imaging. B, assists in determining the location of hidden fires. Does anyone have any questions about what we went over today? Well, thank you guys for coming, and we'll see you in our next lesson.